In the heart of a forgotten village nestled between thick baobab trees and ancient stones lay a secret the elders whispered about, but dared not reveal. The villagers called it the Grave of Promises, a vast graveyard where the air grew cold even. Under the midday sun and the shadows whispered the names of the dead. No one walked past it at night, not the farmers returning late, not even the dogs. Everyone knew that the graveyard was alive in ways no one could explain. But one day, a strange announcement echoed through the village square. A wedding was to be held, right in the graveyard. The bride was Zina, a brave and radiant young woman known for her wild spirit and laughter that could soften even the hardest heart. The groom was Alyamo, a soft-spoken hunter who had once killed a lion with his bare hands and wore its tooth around his neck. Why the graveyard? People asked, confused and trembling. But Zina's father, Chief Ofori, remained silent, his face always turned away from the question. Zina, however, spoke with certainty. The graveyard holds my promise. I cannot marry anywhere else. As the wedding day drew near, the villagers gossiped with dread, and even the drummers refused to play. But no one dared challenge the chief's family. On the eve of the wedding, the skies turned the color of ash, and the moon hung low like an eye watching the earth. The elders gathered in secret, performing a forgotten ritual to protect the village from whatever might awaken when vows were exchanged on sacred ground. That night, Zina sat before a mirror, brushing her hair with calm hands. "Are you not afraid?" her cousin whispered. "Fear is only for those who forget," Zina replied softly. "And I remember everything." Outside her hut, a strange wind blew, a wind that sounded like chanting voices and footsteps dancing among dry leaves. Zina smiled at the wind. It had been calling her since she was a child. Many years ago, Zina had wandered into the graveyard. At night, chasing a white bird that glowed under the moonlight. There she found an old woman seated on a stone, humming a tune Zina would never forget. "You are not lost," the woman had said. "You are found, and you will return here, not alone, but as a bride." That memory had stayed with Zina, buried deep beneath dreams and years, but now it bloomed like fire. The wedding morning arrived with an eerie stillness. Even the birds did not sing, and the village drums remained silent. Alyamo, dressed in the finest hunter's robe, embroidered with the feather of a mythical eagle, his eyes heavy with questions he could not ask. As the bride and groom walked toward the graveyard, the villagers watched from their doorways, clutching charms and whispering prayers. The path to the graveyard seemed longer than usual. The air thickened with every step, and even the insects held their breath. At the gate stood the old woman Zina had once met, the same one who had disappeared years ago. "Welcome, child," she said. "The dead await your joy." 100 white stones marked the wedding ground, and upon each sat a crow, silent, unmoving, like statues. In the center stood an altar of bones carved into shapes of lovebirds and spirals, and above it, a ghostly silk canopy fluttered without wind. Zina and Alyamo stood before the altar. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scents of myrrh, rain, and something ancient. The old woman raised her hands, and a whisper passed through the trees. "Who gives this bride to the realm of truth?" Chief Ofori stepped forward, eyes brimming with grief. "I do, as I once failed to," he said, kneeling before his daughter. "Let the spirits bear witness," the old woman intoned. "And let no lie be spoken, lest the ground reject it." As Zina opened her mouth to say her vows, her voice echoed threefold: hers, another woman's, and something deeper still. "I wed not just this man," she said, "but the truth of who I am, of what I once promised, and what I now fulfill." Alyamo, shaking, took her hand. "I do not understand," he whispered. "You will," she replied, "before the sun sets." Suddenly the ground shook gently, and the stones began to glow, one by one, as if spirits were waking. The crows flew upward in perfect silence, forming a black ring above the couple like a crown. Then the old woman produced a ring, not of gold, but of bone polished smooth by time and sorrow. "This belonged to the bride who was once betrayed," she said, sliding it onto Zina's finger. Alyamo offered a ring of silver, but it melted in his palm, hissing like boiling water. "Only truth endures," the old woman reminded. "Lie to her here, and your name shall fade from the living and the dead." Alyamo nodded, breathless, and spoke, "I take you." Zina, not knowing all, but trusting it is you. The wind calmed, and the graveyard fell into a hush so deep even the trees seemed to sleep. The ceremony ended, and a strange joy spread through the air, a joy tinged with sorrow, like a forgotten lullaby. That night, the couple remained in the graveyard, as tradition demanded. "One night with the dead, one lifetime with truth," the old woman had said. As the moon reached its peak, Alyamo stirred beside Zina and noticed the white bird perched near them, watching. "What are you truly?" he asked, no longer afraid. "The bride of two worlds," Zina replied. "Bound by a vow I made as a child, when I first saw death and chose not to run." "Why here? Why now?" Alyamo pressed, touching the bone ring. Zina leaned close. "Because love is not only for the living." The white bird flapped its wings once, and a ripple passed over the tombstones like wind moving through grass. Alyamo stood and looked around. The graveyard felt different now, less like a place of death, more like a place of waiting. "Zina," he said, "are we truly alone here?" "No," she answered, "but we are not in danger. The dead here are listening, not hunting." A soft light began to emanate from the stones. Shadows moved, but they moved with grace, not menace. One by one, the spirits of those buried in the graveyard appeared, faint, like smoke, their eyes glowing softly with remembrance. Zina turned to Alyamo and took his hands. "These are the ones I vowed to honor. A long time ago, my family wronged them." "Wronged them how?" Alyamo asked, his voice steady. "Chief Ofori, my father, once promised this land would never be touched by greed. But he broke that promise to gain power. And you must repair it with your wedding?" "Not just the wedding," Zina replied, "but with truth, unity, and remembrance. The vows awaken the promise and bind my bloodline back to peace." A spirit stepped forward, a tall woman with a broken necklace around her neck and eyes that glistened like wet obsidian. "I am Ataku," she said. "I was the first to be betrayed. And now, I bless your union if your heart speaks no lies." Alyamo bowed deeply. "I do not understand all of this, but I love Zina truly. My heart is open." The spirit smiled, then turned into a swirl of petals and vanished into the wind. Others followed, dozens of spirits offering cryptic blessings, songs in forgotten dialects, and gifts made of mist. Each spirit faded only after speaking one phrase. "The promise is restored." At dawn, the graveyard fell silent again. Zina and Alyamo stood hand in hand, the light of morning touching their skin like a benediction. The white bird flew high, then vanished into the rising sun. They returned to the village in silence, both changed, both carrying something unseen. The villagers gasped as they approached. Zina's eyes now shimmered with a glow that had not been there before. Chief Ofori fell to his knees and wept before his daughter. "You have done what I could not. You have made peace." That night, a feast was held in the village square, not loud, but reverent, as if the whole village now understood the cost of forgetting. Elders passed around gourds of palm wine and told stories not heard in decades, of the betrayal, of the curse, and now, of the redemption. Zina and Alyamo moved into the chief's old compound, but every full moon, they returned to the graveyard. With gifts, they planted flowers on forgotten graves, sang to the dead, and kept the promise alive. As months passed, their home became a place of quiet wisdom. Young couples came to ask for blessings. The sick came for healing advice. Zina never claimed to be a seer or a priestess, but people called her the bride of the veil. Children listened to her tales about the white bird, the woman named Ataku, and the vows made with the dead. Alyamo hunted no more. Instead, he became a carver, shaping wood into the faces of ancestors and lovers long gone. Their first child was born beneath a crescent moon, and his cries were soft, as if he already knew silence was sacred. The boy was named Obayaku, which means the heart remembers. On Obayaku's naming day, the wind carried music though no flute was seen, and the sky shimmered with silver clouds. The old woman from the graveyard came once more, placing a stone under the baby's mat. "He is protected," she said, and vanished again. But peace never lasts forever. One season, a stranger arrived in the village, dressed in fine cloth. riding a metal beast with wheels, offering gold and gifts. He was a merchant from the city, claiming he could turn the graveyard into a tourist shrine. Imagine the profit, he said, flashing white teeth. Weddings in the graveyard, let people pay to walk among the dead. The chief's council was tempted. Some nodded, whispering about wealth and modern times. Zina stood quietly, listening, holding her sleeping child. That night, she and Alyamo returned to the graveyard, this time with no songs or flowers, only silence. They planned to sell you, Zina whispered into the earth. The ground rumbled slightly, and a whisper passed through the trees. The promise must not break. Zina knelt on the same stone where she'd once met the old woman. Tell me what to do. The white bird returned, circling once BEF.